Hi, I am Kendra, and I am documenting my journey with essential thrombocytosis, which is a MPN, which is a myeloprolific neoplasm cancer, a blood cancer that could turn into and progress into leukemia. At this time, my cancer has stayed steady. However, my quality of life has not. And it's been a long, hard journey to where I'm at today. In 2010, I was asked by my primary care physician to go see a hematologist, oncologist, because she had noticed a trend in my platelets going up. I went to see the hematologist, oncologist. He told us about essential thrombocytosis and told me, because I didn't have any other symptoms and wasn't showing any signs, that I could take an aspirin a day to keep my blood thin, because the platelets are what is the sticky part, clotting factor of the blood. But he wanted to do a bone marrow biopsy to confirm the diagnosis. I went ahead and scheduled the bone marrow biopsy. I started the aspirin a day. However, I was starting a brand new job, and I really didn't want to have a bone marrow biopsy, just based on what I thought I knew about them and painful it might be. So I skipped the bone marrow biopsy. Flash ahead to 2016. I had been seeing my gynecologist for a while due to having bleeding and trying to understand why it was happening. At the time, I was 43, and there was really no need. So after several different medication trials, different avenues like patches or pills or whatever, I did go ahead and see the GYN who did the mechanical partial hysterectomy. He did an internal ultrasound, which showed that I had an occlusion or an occlusion in my uterus, so I would bleed for a little while, and then it would get kind of stuck, and then I'd bleed a couple of weeks later, and then it gets up. So that was really uncomfortable, and he advised that I should get the partial hysterectomy. So I went ahead. That was in December of 2016 to January 31st, 2017 was my robotic partial hysterectomy. Supposedly I did fine. Came home, was discharged. However, I did not get better. My body was swelling. It wasn't recovering. I just didn't feel good at all. It came to a point about 2 weeks after my hysterectomy that I was having trouble breathing or difficulty breathing, and I asked my husband to take me to the ER, which he did, and they promptly hooked me up to every machine imaginable, the heart machine, the breathing machine, everything, and then sent me for a CAT scan, where they found fluid in my pleural space of my lungs. And it was basically drowning me, crushing my lungs, the fluid. They went ahead and admitted me, drained one lung, and the hospitalist told me that I could either go home for the night and come back first thing in the morning, and they would drain the second lung, or I could stay overnight at the hospital and get my second one done the next day. They can't do both lungs at the same time because of risk of collapsing a lung. So I went ahead and had the one lung drained, stayed overnight, had the second one drained, was told by the hospitalist to just weigh myself every morning, and he was discharging me. After several trips back to the hospital, because I could tell that my lungs were filling up with fluid daily. Every time I'd roll over, it felt like I was being crushed, and couldn't get a deep breath. So for a little while, I was getting one drained one day. The next day, I come back for the next lung, back and forth for a while. Finally getting admitted. Oh, all the while, the hospitalist was discharging me with no real diagnosis other than just weigh yourself every morning and see if you're retaining more fluid. It came to the point that they finally admitted me because I couldn't breathe anymore. I was admitted, and really nobody could figure out why all this was happening. I have a very great friend, Lori, who helped guide my husband during this time, because I was kind of in and out of it. I wasn't totally alert and aware. And she recommended that he ask for a higher level of care. At that time, they included a GI doctor who looked at all of my tests that had been done prior to this, and he diagnosed me after consulting with several radiologists that I had Budd-Chiari, which Budd-Chiari is the hepatic veins being blocked in the liver, so the blood wasn't getting out of my liver. So it was the toxins that the liver typically filters out were all going to my brain, which is hepatic encephalopathy. Makes me very confused, makes me tired, don't want to open my eyes, memory loss, agitation. The day Dr. Sears came in and told us the diagnosis was February 27th, which was my 44th birthday. And he was transferring me to the University Hospital in Denver to have a liver transplant. On the 28th, I was transferred up to Anschutz, and really don't have any memory other than a very foggy memory of one of the paramedics that rode in the back with me. When I got to Anschutz, of course, all the doctors come in and get all their information and gather their information, and my hepatologist couldn't understand why I couldn't open my eyes, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't open my eyes. And that night, they started me on the transplant process right away, which is kind of a longer process. I did not have an exact match donor yet, and my surgeons came in to tell me that they had found a workaround, that I may not have to have the transplant, that they would create a biological shunt at the bottom of my liver directly into my small intestines, so the toxins would just bypass the liver and be excreted. However, I was still encephalopathic. I went ahead and had that surgery. I have very, very few memories for the next month to 2 months. I never really was getting better. They tried me on medications. My blood work wasn't coming back appropriately. I'm not really sure all of the tests they ran me through. I ended up on a feeding tube, which I promptly pulled out. I was in ICU after the surgery. I pulled out all my tubes. I was very confused. They also did a bone marrow biopsy because, of course, my platelet count was still high. And having a platelet count in the 900,000s is a problem because it forms blood clots, which is exactly what happened. I only had one hepatic vein remaining after prior liver surgery a decade prior to this, which we weren't really aware of until we found out that I had clotted that. So I had a blocked hepatic vein. Nothing was really getting filtered out. It was all backing up into my spleen, which is called portal hypertension. And once they told my husband that once they put in the shunt, that it should relieve the pressure and should allow my toxins to be filtered out directly through my small intestines. So that went on for a couple months while I tried to recover lots of tests. One of which was a bone marrow biopsy, which found that I still had very high platelets, and now I had had a blood clot, so I was at risk with the essential thrombocytosis of having more clots. Because I had Kaiser insurance, they did not allow me to see Ann Schutz's oncology team because Kaiser had an oncology team close by. Although we did not live in Denver. We live about an hour north of Denver. So I did not see the oncologist prior to being discharged. I ended up on Medicaid, and then once I lost my Kaiser insurance and I was on Medicaid, the hospital contacted me, the oncology department, asked me to come back in for more testing. He did another bone marrow biopsy at that time. I met with the hematologist oncologist, who is actually a specialist in MPNs, which is the myeloprolific neoplasms cancers. And he confirmed the diagnosis of essential thrombocytosis and put me on an oral chemotherapy, which I have taken since 2017, along with 20 other pills for different things. At this point, I feel like I have a specialist for everything. The last year, October of 2022, I had an iron infusion because I was highly anemic, and had been getting iron infusions on and off since I had been home. I was also having migraines, which is something I have also suffered with since I was a teenager, but is also a symptom of essential thrombocytosis. The neurologist put me on a medication called Qulipta, which is a preventative. However, she also gave me a non-DHE infusion it's a rescue medication. If I'm in the middle of a headache, I can get that. In October, I had an iron infusion back to back with a non-DHE or a DHE rescue, and I went right into hepatic encephaloptic episode that lasted a good week. Even before I had gotten home from the hospital, I was in my, what I call a nap, but you can go into a coma with the hepatic encephalopathy if it gets too bad. But really, ever since I came out of that episode, I really haven't been feeling well like I had before. I would try, and over the year, I saw my PCP, I saw my hematologist, I saw my GI, I saw my hepatic team, and nobody could understand why I didn't feel good. I was losing weight, starting to lose weight. In May, on Mother's Day, I was in the ER with a kidney infection, which ended up to be 3 kidney infections back to back to back. So that didn't help either. But I kept telling the doctors, I don't feel well. I haven't felt well since October, and I really didn't know why I wasn't feeling well. Food did not interest me anymore. It actually made me sick to my stomach to go into the kitchen and smell food. So I was having a very difficult time eating anything. At that point, I was about 1 meal, possibly a day, and sometimes drinking protein shakes. They had always had me on protein shakes or supplements, and I continued to lose weight. I had an appointment with my hematologist, oncologist, who believed that couldn't understand. I'm sorry, back up. I saw my PCP finally for the 3rd kidney infection, and she looked at my labs and said, this is not iron anemia. I want you to contact your hematologist. So I did. My hematologist agreed. What he really thought it was internal bleeding. I was told that over the phone. And he wanted me to have a pill cam, which is a capsule that has a little camera in it. You swallow it, and it follows your GI tract, takes pictures all the way down. Went to my GI doctor. Unfortunately, at this point, I'm on Medicare for disability. Medicare requires that you have an endoscopy and a colonoscopy within the prior 12 months before they will approve the pill cam. I had just had an endoscopy, so I had to do the colonoscopy, and a week later, because they couldn't find anything on colonoscopy, did the pill cam, which showed what they call AVIs. I also, in my small intestine, there's an area that cannot be reached by the different scopes, but the pill cam can catch those images, which I had about 7 or 8 BB size bleeds in that area. So I was told that over the phone. My hematologist had me come in and do another bone marrow biopsy, met with me and my husband, and really thought that my cancer had progressed to the next level of myelofibrosis, which is also an MPN. So did the bone marrow biopsy, met with him again, and good news, it hadn't progressed. Bad news, we still have no idea why I'm doing this, or where the bleeding is coming from. And I had bleeding episodes from my mouth, from my nose, with my stools, all the way along this whole process. And because it came back that it had not progressed, the hematologist really wasn't sure at this point where to go. And I asked about a stem cell transplant, because he had mentioned that if it had progressed to myelofibrosis, would that be a treatment? And actually, that is the recommended treatment for that. So I met with the transplant team, kind of going in with the attitude of not good results. He was going to listen to me and be like, because I've had doctors not listen to me and not hear what my symptoms are, and not really, it doesn't feel like they really care about treating me. We met with the stem cell doctor, and at the end of the appointment, I asked him directly, would I qualify for a stem cell transplant? And he said yes. So it was the first time I had hope, experienced the feeling of hope since 2017. My quality of life is very minimal. I sleep a lot. I have no energy to do fun things. I don't want to be out and about. We lived through COVID with this diagnosis. Neither my husband or I got COVID, thank God. We are very, very careful. And then he had the transplant nurse coordinator come down and meet with us, and the process started. So he took a bunch of labs. I don't know exactly all the labs he took. One of them was my match and type blood test. They got that back. Once they get that back, it was my doctor reviewed it and chose 10 people out of the Be the Match donor website for stem cells. Out of those 10, as of the week prior to Christmas, 4 of them had responded, all of which had made their appointments with their team to do the further testing. One of those, the week prior to Christmas, had already gotten their report back to my doctor. At this point, I am waiting to hear if they've gotten any more reports, or if we're moving ahead with the one that came back. And because of the holidays, I kind of figured that we weren't going to get very much information, if any at all. So this next week, I'm very hopeful that I will have some information about when I can start this process. The process for a bone marrow donor or stem cell donor is so simple compared to what I thought it was. They go in, the donor goes in wherever they're located and has basically a blood donation that takes about 5 hours. So they can experience some tiredness, weakness afterwards, but really that's all the donor has to do, and that's all the side effects. Once they have donated, it gets transported, escorted back to my hospital. Prior to that, I will get 5 to 7 days of intense chemotherapy and or radiation to kill off my entire stem cells and to replace them, so my body is able to replace those with the healthy stem cells. And then the donor would go in, donate. The next day or so, I would, I think it's the next day, I would get my transplant, which is, again, it feels like an infusion. It runs 24 hours. I'll have a port in here in my jugular. I already have a port for all my infusions over there. And I don't have to live in a bubble like I thought, because I am going to be highly immunocompromised. I will be on the transplant floor, but that entire floor is stem cell transplant patients for the first 30 days. And that's to make sure that the host is grafting to my bone marrow and that it can take hold and start growing new stem cells. After the 30 days and when I'm discharged, I will have to live within 31 miles of the hospital. So we will be in an apartment in Denver for the next 2 months after that. The cool thing is people can come visit me in the hospital. They can bring me food from outside. It has come a long way since I was a child and thought I had to be completely isolated from everyone. I will be isolated in our apartment and in Denver because I just don't have any family in Denver. So I'm a little bummed about that. So the next 2 months will be just making sure the first couple weeks I'll have 3 appointments a week with the doctor, and then I'll go down to 2 appointments a week and then 1, and then I should be at the tail end. The whole process usually takes about 100 days. We all know in my family that I have strong reactions to medications and don't always follow the guidelines. My body doesn't like them. So I'm praying that this will be an easy transition, although I will be very tired and with chemotherapy very sick. I meet with a psychologist. I meet with a social worker who plans the logistics. I meet with a dietitian every 2 weeks. And as long as I can maintain where I'm at, I'm the lowest I've been since high school. She's not terribly concerned right now, but I will lose weight during chemotherapy as well. So that's where I'm at. And so this is New Year's Eve 2023. I will start January 1st, 2024, with renewed hope that I have a transplant coming within the next month. And I will keep you all updated. My husband and I have had to come a long way about talking about death and dying, which is not something he was ready to talk about for a long time. But thankfully we're able to talk about now. And I highly encourage everyone to make sure you have a living will and you've discussed your wishes with your family. Because my first episode in 2017, I was in a coma right away, and I had no control over anything. So this time I'm going in with a plan. My husband knows what that plan is. Everyone's on the same page. My kids understand the plan. They're all adults and living in Michigan, and one lives in Colorado, but she travels. So I'm excited. Hopefully the next video I put up will be finding out I have a donor, and we start scheduling appointments. So go ahead, hug your loved ones. Tell them how much you love them. I'll talk to you soon.